The movie begins with a child asking his father about their home. Millions of years ago, a vibranium meteorite, the strongest substance in the universe, fell down to Africa and affected the surrounding life force around it with its energy. 5 African tribes settled and battled over this crash site they called Wakanda, until a warrior is given a vision by the Panther goddess Bess. He receives a heart-shaped herb, a plant that grants him superhuman abilities. He unites the tribes, except for the Jabari tribe who refuse to yield to him and isolate themselves to the mountain. He becomes their first king and protector, called the Black Panther. The Wakandans use the vibranium to develop a civilization more advanced than any other country. Because of the constant war and devastation around the world, they decide to hide their civilization and protect their technology from falling into the wrong hands. It is the year 1992 in Oakland, California. Iniabu is explaining to James, his associate, how he will smuggle the firearms to their partner when he suddenly senses something. He tells the man to hide the weapons. Not a minute later, there is a knock on their door. Iniabu tells James to open it and come 2 Wakandan warriors. They ask him to identify who he is and he tells them he is a prince of Wakanda. The lights go off, and when they come back, the king of Wakanda, his brother T'Chaka, appears before them. Iniabu quickly gets down to his knees to pay his brother respect, and urges James to do the same. T'Chaka orders James to leave him and his brother to talk, but Iniabu pleads with him that he trusts James with his life, and to let him stay. T'Chaka agrees and tells them to rise. He explains that there has been an attack, led by a man by the name of Ulysses Claw. He stole vibranium from them and triggered a bomb to escape. Ulysses knew where the vibranium was, and went to strike. T'Chaka confronts his brother about why he assisted the man. Iniabu denies his accusation, but T'Chaka suddenly talks to James and he reveals that he is also an undercover Wakandan named Zuri. Iniabu had no idea about his identity and trusted him blindly. Iniabu is in disbelief that James betrayed him. He furiously vents his frustrations, but T'Chaka stops them. Zuri takes the vibranium Iniabu smuggled and hands it over to T'Chaka. T'Chaka orders his brother to return home and face the consequences of his actions before the council. In the present day, King T'Chaka passes away after a attack. His son, Prince T'Challa, will be the successor to the throne. T'Challa is in a hidden aircraft with Okoye, leader of the elite warriors of Wakanda, on their way to Wakanda for his coronation. Before they continue their journey, however, they want to extract Nakia, T'Challa's former lover, from her assignment so she can attend his coronation. T'Challa jumps out of the aircraft and throws 3 objects that attach themselves to the 3 vehicles down below, manned by a group holding hostages. The vehicles immediately lose power, and the people inside start to investigate. Nakia senses T'Challa, and the 2 fight off the group of men and saves the hostages. The 3 of them return to Wakanda at sunrise. It is hidden deep in the mountains, surrounded by a force field that makes the whole nation invisible. The aircraft lands in front of the palace, where Queen Ramonda and Princess Shuri are waiting for their arrival. Iniadaka, son of Iniabu, is in the Museum of Great Britain in London, examining the artifacts and asking the curator about them. He corrects her, saying that those are stolen Wakandan artifacts, and offers to take them off their shoulders. The curator feels threatened and tries to call for security, but she suddenly collapses because of her drink, which Iniadaka tampered with. Instead of kicking Iniadaka out of the museum security instead focuses on tending to the curator. 2 men from the rescue team arrive and suddenly shoot the security guards. It turns out that they are with Iniadaka. The man in the security room has no idea of what is happening, because the system was rigged to play the same scene over and over again. They take the Wakandan artifact and escape in an ambulance. Back in Wakanda, the ceremony of T'Challa is taking place. T'Challa arrives on top of the waterfalls where the Wakandans are waiting for him. He the ceremonial drink, making him struggle and fight for his breath for a moment, but he composes himself and fights its side effects. The priest offers the other tribes a chance to challenge T'Challa for the claim to the throne, but they all announce that they will not challenge him. The Jabari tribe suddenly arrives, led by M'Baku, and mocks the other tribes for their love of technological advancements, not paying respect to tradition. M'Baku mocks T'Challa for not being able to protect his own father and challenges him for the throne. T'Challa does not back down and immediately accepts his challenge. M'Baku has a much larger physique than T'Challa. He attacks him immediately when the battle starts and does not leave any space for him to strike back. T'Challa blocks him the best he can, but M'Baku manages to strike him down. This lifts the spirit of the Jabari warriors as they take a step forward. T'Challa quickly stands and strikes back, sending M'Baku down. This agitates M'Baku and he starts swinging his weapon wildly at T'Challa. T'Challa evades his strikes quickly, but because of the adrenaline that pumps through M'Baku, he is struck by his weapon with full force, sending him back down to the ground and causing him to lose his mask and weapon. This greatly worries Queen Ramonda and the Wakandans, but T'Challa's resolve does not waver as he gets up once again. Without his weapon, T'Challa punches M'Baku and evades his swings several times, until M'Baku gets a hold of him and lifts him up. M'Baku headbutts him several times, causing his vision to get blurry. He mocks him, claiming that he is just a boy and cannot rule Wakanda. T'Challa sees his family among the crowd, and his spirit is immediately lifted. He fights back and proclaims who he is, managing to pin M'Baku on the edge of the waterfalls. The Wakandans start chanting his name as he gives M'Baku a chance to yield, telling him that his people need him. M'Baku yields with honor as the Jabari tribe help him up. T'Challa is finally crowned as King of Wakanda and the Black Panther. That night is the time for him to ingest the heart-shaped herb to gain the strength to protect his people. The Wakandans prepare the drink infused with the herb, and the priest makes him drink it. He remembers the day of the attack as the Wakandans bury him in red soil as part of the ritual. T'Challa's consciousness is transported to a place they call the Ancestral Plane, where they can see their ancestors and acquire their wisdom. He sees several panthers in the trees and approaches them. One panther jumps down and transforms into his father. They hug each other, and he apologizes for not being able to save him. He asks for his wisdom to be a good king. His father advises him to surround himself with people who he trusts. His consciousness returns to his body in the real world, and he rises abruptly from the soil. The priest calms him down as he tells him that he saw his father in the Ancestral Plane. T'Challa and Nakia are walking on the streets of Wakanda. She tells him that she must go now. It is her calling to help those in need. She suggests that Wakanda can provide for other people and protect themselves at the same time. T'Challa is not very fond of the idea because the moment the world finds out about them and their advancements, they will want something from them and even take it by force. T'Challa visits Wakabi, Okoye's husband, at the farm range to consult him about Nakia's idea. He, too, is strongly against it and believes that it will only cause problems for Wakanda. They receive a call from Okoye summoning them to the palace. With the leaders of the other tribes, T'Challa and Queen Mother Ramonda, Okoye tells them about the stolen Wakandan artifact from a British museum. The man behind it is Ulysses Claw, and he plans to sell it to a CIA agent in South Korea tomorrow night. T'Challa considers it and wants to capture Claw, after being able to evade them for a long time. Wakabi asks to take him for the mission, but T'Challa knows that he must protect the borders of Wakanda. He assures him that they will bring Claw back to face the consequences of his deeds. T'Challa pays his sister a visit to her laboratory. Shuri shows him the latest creations and explains how they are used, in order for him to utilize them in their mission to South Korea. She shows him his new Black Panther suit that activates on command. It absorbs the energy from any strike and redirects it back to the enemy. He, Okoye, and Nakia arrive in Busan in formal attire to blend in with a party. Nakia talks to an elderly Korean woman, and they are allowed into the secret party where the CIA agent is likely to be. The three of them spread out to cover more ground. T'Challa is the first one to spot the CIA agent, Everett Ross, as they already know each other. He approaches him and indirectly confronts him about buying a stolen Wakandan artifact from Claw. Everett indirectly tells him that whatever business he has in that place, he is doing it on behalf of the U.S. government, and it is none of his concern. T'Challa asserts that Claw will be leaving with him in custody tonight. Everett gives his associates a heads up about the situation and tries to explain to T'Challa that their meetup cannot be cancelled tonight. He offers him a deal to work something out with him after the trade is settled, but T'Challa refuses. Claw arrives at the bar with his men and sees Everett. T'Challa and his group are highly alert to secure the place and locate the artifact. Meanwhile, Claw approaches Everett and proceeds with the transaction. Everett calls for his associate to bring the suitcase of diamonds in exchange for the artifact made from vibranium. Claw's men start suspecting Okoye, and a fight breaks out between them. In an instant, Claw and his men start shooting, and the Wakandans fight them off to protect the civilians and secure Claw. T'Challa corners him, but Claw's hand suddenly turns into a weapon and blasts T'Challa off the second floor of the bar. He and his remaining men manage to escape in their vehicles with the vibranium intact. Okoye and Nakia get in their car and pursue Claw. T'Challa calls on Shuri to drive another car rigged with her device, creating a hologram back in Wakanda. He activates the Black Panther suit and jumps on top of the car. Claw orders his men to split up, forcing the Wakandans to pursue two different groups. Claw's men start shooting at him, but bullets do not penetrate his suit. On the other hand, Okoye and Nakia's car is made of vibranium, making it impenetrable as well. Just as they are about to catch up with Claw, he blasts their vibranium car with his weapon hand. The car is obliterated in an instant, but Okoye and Nakia remain unharmed. Everett pulls over and offers them a ride. Claw shoots the car Shuri is driving as well, obliterating it and making him lose her connection to it. T'Challa jumps onto his car and forcibly wrenches out a tire. The vehicle loses control and tumbles down the road. Claw gets out of the vehicle, battered, as T'Challa confronts him. He blasts him with his hand weapon, but the Black Panther suit just absorbs its energy. T'Challa strides closer until he rips Claw's hand weapon out of his arm. He is about to fatally strike him when Okoye and Nakia arrive to stop him. Claw is tied to a chair in a room with a one-way mirror. Everett and T'Challa fight over custody of Claw. T'Challa wants to bring him to Wakanda to pay for his crimes, but he decides to go along with Everett's plan of interrogation. Everett enters the holding room and immediately starts asking Claw about his advanced weapon. He wants to get a hold of his technology on behalf of the U.S. government. Claw tells him to ask T'Challa instead, because his weapon is Wakandan technology. Their poverty and struggles are just a front to hide their true advancements. Meanwhile, Claw's men are on the move, locating him by tracking his weapon hand. Nakia thinks the van that passed by the building is suspicious, and looks into it. Iniadaka gets out of the van and puts explosives on the wall of the building from the outside. Everett confronts T'Challa about Claw's rambling, but at that moment, the bomb explodes and obliterates the wall to Claw's holding room. Iniadaka steps in and rains bullets on the one-way mirror, shattering it to pieces. The people inside take cover as Claw's men carry him out. Iniadaka throws a grenade inside the building, and they escape on their vehicle. T'Challa runs after them, but Iniadaka blasts him. He is thrown back, but before he loses sight of Iniadaka, he sees a familiar ring he wears as a necklace around his neck. T'Challa comes back in and finds that Everett is fatally wounded. He decides to bring him back to Wakanda. Okoye is against it, mainly because Everett works for the US government. But Nakia and T'Challa want to help and repay him. They go straight to Shuri's laboratory, where she gives him the medical attention he needs. Wakabi enters the laboratory, eager to see Claw. T'Challa deeply regrets informing him that Claw slipped through their hands. Wakabi leaves him, disappointed. Claw and his group enter an aircraft junkyard, where their getaway plane is waiting. Just as they are getting in, Iniadaka betrays them, putting down Claw and his men. Back in Wakanda, T'Challa confronts an elder about the ring he saw on the man who let Claw escape. The elder is reluctant to speak, as he swore to the now-deceased King T'Chaka never to speak of it. However, T'Challa demands the truth and asserts his power as the king. The elder finally tells him about the mission his uncle took in America. There, he fell in love with an American woman and had a child with her. Iniabu wanted to arm the people to fight against evil in their respective country, and in turn, Wakanda could rule over them in what he claimed to be the right way. T'Chaka was not in favor of it. This forced Iniabu to collaborate with Claw in stealing the vibranium. After T'Chaka found out, he sent Iniabu back to Wakanda to pay for his treason. Iniabu did not receive this command well and was about to shoot when T'Chaka struck first. It is now revealed that the elder is in fact Zuri. T'Chaka ended his own brother to save Zuri. The young Iniadaka was left in America to keep the truth about Wakanda a secret. Iniadaka arrives in Wakanda and imprisons Claw's corpse to Wakabi. This immediately gains him his respect. Everett wakes up, surprised to see that he is fully healed up. He looks around the laboratory, asking Shuri questions about the place. He cannot believe how advanced their technology. Shuri suddenly receives a call from Okoye, informing him about a man who apparently brought Claw's corpse. Shuri calls for her brother, and when he gets to the laboratory, Everett explains that Iniadaka is part of U.S. intelligence, known as Eric Stevens. He excelled in all his assignments and got the title Killmonger. Killmonger is brought before T'Challa and the Council of Wakanda. He questions T'Challa's capability and priorities as king. Wakanda is capable of helping and liberating those who are in need, yet they refuse to do so, as it is not their way of living. Killmonger reveals who he is before the council, and challenges T'Challa for the claim of the throne. Queen Ramonda objects fiercely, but the council argues that Killmonger has the right to challenge him. T'Challa accepts his challenge. The Wakandans return to the top of the waterfalls to witness the battle between T'Challa and Killmonger. T'Challa gives Killmonger a chance to back down and settle things in a different way, but Killmonger is driven by his desire to rule, so he is not going to let his chance go. The battle begins, and the two of them are evenly matched. Both of them manage to put the other to the ground, but they quickly stand back. Killmonger takes the upper hand and manages to slash and stab T'Challa several times. He is about to land the last blow to end T'Challa, when Zuri intervenes and confesses that he is the reason that Iniabu's life ended. Killmonger does not show any hesitation and immediately stabs Zuri. This agitates T'Challa. With his last bursts of strength, he picks up his weapon and swings wildly at Killmonger. However, this only makes him look pathetic, as he is too weak to land any blows on Killmonger. His opponent easily dodges him as he makes a point to the Wakandans. He lifts T'Challa off the ground and throws him down the waterfall. Queen Ramonda and Shuri barely have time to lament, as Nakia hurriedly leads them away in fear for their safety. As a result of the match, the Wakandans proclaim Killmonger as their new king. That night, Nakia returns to the palace, seeking Okoye's help to overthrow Killmonger. Okoye is firmly against her idea, as Killmonger won fair and square, and she is loyal to the throne, no matter who the king is. Nakia just cannot accept Killmonger, and her decisions are greatly affected not only by her love for Wakanda, but her love for T'Challa. Nakia breaks Everett out of his holding room and takes him with her to escape Killmonger's rule. The ritual of becoming the Black Panther is taking place for Killmonger. He remembers the night T'Chaka ended his father's life. He was playing basketball outside the building when he saw an aircraft leave the area. He quickly returned to their apartment, only to find his father's lifeless body. His consciousness is transported to their apartment when he was a child. Iniabu is there waiting for him. He sympathizes with his son for Wakanda's abandonment. Killmonger believes that Wakanda is lost, just like his father did, and needs someone to lead it in the right direction. His consciousness returns to his body, and his first order is to burn all the remaining heart-shaped herbs, so no one can replace him as king. Nakia manages to sneak into the ceremonial room and get hold of a heart-shaped herb. Killmonger ascends the throne. He speaks to the Wakandan Council about the oppression he and his fellow men experienced growing up in the U.S. and how they did not have the firepower to fight back. Now that he is king, he wants to arm the oppressed to fight back against their oppressors. He believes that it is time for the world to know the strength of Wakanda. Okoye argues that Wakanda only fights when the circumstance is absolutely necessary, but Wakabi believes that these are different times, and if they do not fight now, they will be oppressed. Killmonger is glad to hear this and takes action right away. Nakia and her companions are ascending the cold mountains, looking for the Jabari tribe. Their plan is to give the last heart-shaped herb to M'Baku, in hopes that he will defeat Killmonger. However, before they can even reach the Jabari lair, the Jabari warriors find them first and surround them. They are brought before M'Baku. Queen Ramonda steps forward and informs him, with all the spite she can muster, that T'Challa was murdered in ritual combat. M'Baku takes this news lightly, as he believes that it only means that T'Challa was defeated. It is part of the ritual, after all. Nakia gets down to one knee and offers him the last heart-shaped herb. She tells him that an outsider now sits on the throne of Wakanda, and he is now their only hope. This silences him for a while, considering the gravity of the situation. Queen Ramonda and the others follow her example and get down to their knees. With that, M'Baku leads them out of the room. He and his soldiers lead the Wakandans to the healing tent. To their surprise, they find T'Challa lying motionless, half buried in the snow. He is in a coma. A Jabari fisherman found him on the riverbank and brought him back to the tribe. Queen Ramonda hurriedly turns the heart-shaped herb into a drink and prays to the ancestors to heal T'Challa. T'Challa's consciousness is back on the ancestral plane. His father invites him to take his place with them. T'Challa thinks for a while and questions his father as to why he did not bring any Adaka with him. T'Chaka simply says that he believed that it was the right thing to do, for the good of Wakanda. T'Challa furiously rebuts that their ways are wrong. They abandon the rest of the world and those who are oppressed to keep themselves hidden. He says that he cannot rest until he makes things right. T'Challa wakes up, bringing joy to the few remaining people around him. The next morning, they inform T'Challa about everything that happened when Killmonger ascended the throne. Shuri gives him the necklace, where his armor is kept. He thanks M'Baku for saving him, and convinces him to join him in fighting back. M'Baku gives him his word that his family can take refuge in the Jabari tribe, but they will not fight with him. Back on the mainland, weapon shipments are in motion. Wakabi informs Killmonger about their progress as ships depart Wakanda. All of a sudden, a ship crashes down. The Wakandans run toward it to inspect, and coming out of the Firefly rubble is T'Challa, in his Black Panther suit. T'Challa wants them to continue the challenge, as he never yielded. This means nothing to Killmonger, as he was already crowned king. He orders the people to carry out the mission, and for Wakabi to end T'Challa. Wakabi orders his men to attack T'Challa. This infuriates Okoye, as Killmonger does not respect their tradition. She orders the elite warriors to split up and protect T'Challa and fight Killmonger. T'Challa brings down the vanguard and throws a charged spear at a departing airship. He pleads to Wakabi to stop the battle, but Wakabi refuses to hear him and fights more ferociously. Meanwhile, Everett pilots a ship from Shuri's laboratory to stop the airship before it can get out of Wakanda. Nakia and Shuri fight Killmonger, but he manages to throw Nakia into the battlefield. He stops Shuri and is ready to strike the final blow. T'Challa sees this and jumps on him, sending them both down to the mines. Wakabi's army manages to surround Okoye and the remaining allies of T'Challa. He gives them a chance to surrender, when suddenly, the Jabari tribe arrives at their aid. Everett destroys all the ships containing the weapons for shipment and runs out of Shuri's lab. On the battlefield, Wakabi and Okoye face each other. Seeing Okoye's conviction and love for their country, Wakabi decides to stand down, putting an end to the battle. Down in the mines, T'Challa manages to stab Killmonger in the heart. He knows that his time is near. T'Challa carries him out of the mines, for him to see the last sunset he will ever see in Wakanda. T'Challa tries to offer him to be healed, but Killmonger believes that passing away is better than becoming a prisoner for the rest of his life. T'Challa reclaims the throne. He goes to California with Shuri, to where their father ended in Yabu. He buys the whole place and plans to turn it into the first Wakandan outreach center. In the post-credit scene, T'Challa announces to the United Nations they are now willing to share their knowledge and resources with the world.